industry, as well as an entrepreneur, local government leader, major motion picture award-winning executive producer. Hello, as well as a race car driver and a recreational pilot. Gene, welcome to the show. I've dubbed you the most interesting man in the world. You could put that Dos Equis spokes guy out of a job. Welcome back. How are you, man?
Well, good to be back with you. Thank you for having me back. Boy, that sounds interesting. I didn't think that was me, but there's so much going on in the world. I can't keep up with what's going on here.
Yeah,
Look,
it's pretty
what's happened
crazy.
in the last 24 hours. Holy schmoly.
I know it. Well, you know what's happening in the last 24 hours. I know what's happening in the last 24 hours. The audience of TNT radio knows what's happening, but a good chunk of the people have no clue because CNN won't cover this stuff. MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC give all of this, and it's blockbuster news that's coming out about the Biden international family of grift. But they're giving it kind of a short shirk as far as the coverage goes. Does that shock you, Gene?
No, we're going through a transition or maybe a transformation. We've got too many balls in the air, and I think people are pressing the buttons of the essence of this democracy on so many levels, Stephen. And the beauty is democracy in America, the constitutional republic we have, has withstood the test of time. It really has. This isn't our first assault, if you will. The nation gets confronted in almost every generation, every other generation with something. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and some of these warlike actions are morphing into something else. The enemy is thinking differently about how to fight, meaning maybe we need to attack the enemy from within. It's an internal assault on our educational system, screwing up our brains on where we think about our sexuality, whether the transgender issue, the imposition of such perversion, even in the elementary school level with children who are still in the formative years. And here we are in politics watching someone who's as dumb as a bag of bolts called Hunter try to screw up with such audacity, screw up a plea deal that was something that was a gift from God. He's lucky to grab it only to find out his attorney is pushing for more to disallow the amicus brief that the oversight folks brought to the court, which was evidence, legitimate evidence on Hunter that came up through all this testimony since the charges against Hunter were first filed. We are a nation in transition, and Steve, we need to put a lid. I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat. Let me be honest. I was pretty impressed with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. the other night on Sean Hannity. But as long as we have an objective approach at fixing the shortcomings, we can whine all day long on these radio shows. But if we don't put in the same sentence the solution, then we're wasting each other's time.
Here. I agree with everything you just said there, including the RFK Jr. Hannity town hall. I thought Hannity was, frankly, out of his depth in that town hall, and there's a lot with RFK Jr. that I vehemently disagree with him on. But Hannity seems to be, especially when they were talking about the Russia-Ukraine situation, Hannity just seemed to be completely oblivious to a lot of the facts involved there. But let's kind of circle back to what you're saying, because I agree with you. It is a nation in transition. I would contend, Gene, that what's going on here is the classic Cloward Piven strategy from the left. In other words, get so much going at once, whether it's transgenderism, the wide open border, all of it. Just throw so much up against the wall that we're so busy we're like, the Dutch boy putting his finger in the dikes in the holes in the dike. There's just so much crap going on that we can't keep up with it all. And it seems to be quite intentional. Like, this is how we're going to tear down this. This is how we're going to, quote unquote, fundamentally change America, by changing everything at once and not letting the other side getting a chance to really get a foothold on it.
Yeah, I've got a tag right on my microphone here as I talk to you. It says divert, distract, and deflect. The
Yeah,
master
there you go. Saul
the
Alinsky.
master strategy since day one with these Democrats has been to divert your attention or distract you or deflect the issue. I heard you earlier mentioning KJP. She morphs the excuse or the position of the White House with such subtlety and wordsmanship that it took some pretty sophisticated reporters to catch the distinctions over the last 3 to 6 months. You know, here's what's happening. What we're observing is that there's an effort right now to try to I don't understand how the Democrats can continue to block what is now becoming so obvious and so evident. Let
Yeah.
me rewind real quick. 1970 something, Richard Nixon. Even the Republicans, when the evidence came out, got behind the Democrats in Congress for the potential for the impeachment hearings. They did it because
Yeah.
the party of Republican or the party of Democrat came second to the principles of this nation. And today we don't see that. We see Democrats under the leadership of Chuck Schumer and what's his name, who didn't beat McCarthy on the Democrat side. These two
Hakeem.
Hakeem, yeah, Hakeem Jeffries. These guys refuse to admit that it's possible that the Democrats could be wrong. And to hear you guys talking a little earlier about Hillary Clinton blaming this global warming heat stuff on MAGA Republicans, I mean, it's just I don't know how far they think they can push this crap, but you can't keep pushing it and think it's going to be legitimized. The pendulum right now is beginning to swing back the other way, and people will rise up and take back their nation by starting with making legitimate votes in their local representations in the cities and towns, the counties,
Yeah.
and the states, not to mention the federal positions. We must be more responsible, each and every one of us listening, and do
Yeah.
our duty as Americans and make sure we vet the people who are running for office to make sure we're not listening to this occupy all of the daytime and evening news here. We've got economic development we should be talking about. We should be talking about incentives for business. We should be talking about
Yeah.
reducing unemployment and bringing taxes down. I don't, not to mention the border. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Well, I'm convinced, Gene, that, and every time I even think this, I shock myself because 5 years ago, maybe not even 5 years ago, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, I would have never believed it to be true. But I do believe it now. And that is, I believe that Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum are dead set on the realignment of global economies, the Great Reset, as he called it in his own book. And that's why Democrats put party first, but I think they're really putting ideology first. And they don't give a rip what Biden did. That's irrelevant to them. He may be guilty as the day is long, but we're going to limp him across the line because we want to realign the global economy, give to the have-nots, take from the haves, and basically just, well, the Great Reset. And
Yeah.
I thought that was such conspiracy talk. Oh my God. I'm like, what are you, out of your
Yeah.
mind? But then you
Yeah.
go watch these speeches in Davos and stuff, and they're dead serious about this, no?
Well, that global elitism, that autocracy and benefit you're talking about is targeted for the select few. And the many, the plebiscites, the feudal system days, where the many were working for the few. You're talking about a two-tiered class system. I made an observation I wrote down. Since you brought it up, can I read you a little story that runs about a minute?
Please.
Okay, so here's an observation. I recently heard a great story off of TikTok. Her name is Rebecca. The story tells you everything you need to know about equality versus equity, therefore, socialism, Marxism versus the term meritocracy. So, an
Right.
economics professor at a local college made a statement that she never failed a student before, but had recently failed the entire class. The class insisted that socialism worked. No one would be poor, no one would be rich. The great equalizer. The professor then said, okay, we will have an experiment in this class. All grades will be averaged, and everyone will get the same grade. No one will fail, but no one will receive an A either. After the first test, the grades were averaged, and everyone got a B. The students who studied very hard were upset. The students who studied a little were very happy. As the second test rolled around, the students who studied a little studied even less. And the ones who studied hard decided they just wanted a free ride too. So they studied very little. And the second average test result was a D as in Delta. So no one was happy. When the third test rolled around, the average was an F, as in Foxtrot. The tests preceded the scores never improved thereafter. Bickering, name calling, blaming all resulted in hard feelings, and no one would study for the benefit of anyone else. To their great surprise, everyone failed. And the professor told them that when government takes away the rewards of hard work socialism would ultimately fail. Because when the reward is great, the effort to succeed is great.
It's absolutely a spot on analogy, and that's exactly what's going on right now with, and you're so right to mention, Gene, that the global elites. This is who the Schwabs of the world, the Zuckerbergs, the Bill Gates of the world, all of these folks, they know better than you. Sit down and shut up, you plebiscite. We've got you covered. Don't believe what you hear on Fox News. In fact, let's mock Fox News. Let's mock TNT radio. Let's mock any news outlet that's not carrying our water and our ideology forward, because that's the way we're going to achieve this wonderful utopia that we have in mind, not necessarily for you plebes, but for us, to make us feel better. We're going to fly our Lear jets all over the place and then bitch about you having an SUV.
Yeah.
But I agree. I do agree. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I do agree with you when you said that the pendulum is starting to swing back, at least here in the States. I mean,
yeah.
I see what's going on in Germany with these outrageous green movements where they're sitting down in traffic. This is going to end in tragedy. You know it is.
Yeah.
They're blocking traffic by just sitting in the roadway. Eventually, somebody's going to get so fed up, they're just going to snap and run over these people.
Yeah.
It's really absurd.
That's right. Don't be surprised. You know, I'm you and I have talked before, and I'm one that believes less government is better government. But in this case, you mentioned Zuckerberg. Well, Zuckerberg and the other elitists, you can name 6 more in that high corporate billionaire, trillionaire standing. These folks need to be regulated. Now, I want less government, but they need to be regulated because it's feeding into the conspiracy of Schwab and Soros that you mentioned earlier. They need to be controlled because AI is under review right now, artificial intelligence, and government has a role. It has a purpose, just like it's done for other industries when starting up in the past, including cellular telephone. There is a place for government to step in and manage the development of a technology or an innovation. And with AI, if you leave it in the hands of the nefarious few, like Zuckerberg and the other 6 you can name, then I think that's where we perpetuate the problem of liberty and freedom being denied to the masses. And we move away from a true democratic constitutional republic, and we find ourselves ensconced in a world of elitism, autocratic control. And in fact, right now, speaking of AI, China's got monitoring devices and control devices inside humans to control their thinking and their physiology and their way and their behavior right now. So that kind of misuse is what I'm suggesting we protect ourselves from here.
Yeah, and not only that, but whoever programs the AI is going to, affect the results of whatever the AI spits out. Chat GBT, of course, is a big example of this, where if you try and say, hey, anything controversial on their perspective, from their, less government, more freedom, it'd come out, no, that's not right. And so they're going to rewrite the rules as they go. I saw a poll yesterday or the day before. I don't know if it was, I couldn't even tell you exactly where I saw it, but I know it's a legit poll. You can look it up. At any rate, it said that young Americans between the age of 18 and 34, back in 2005, their pride of their country was at like 85%, something. I'm just kind of spitballing it here.
Yeah.
But it was really high. Now, the most recent poll, which I think was like 2020, 26% of that age group was prideful of their nation.
Yeah,
and that is absolutely because they are BSing and saying this nation has never gotten over its original sin. I heard, I don't know if you saw that speech where Biden was talking, where he named the Emmett Till and had the Till family there. And he kept saying, we can't hide the truth. We must embrace the truth. Never once did he say, by the way, the guy that killed Emmett Till was a Democrat. The policies that Emmett Till, that the Till family were fighting against were Democrat policies. Every Jim Crow law is a Democrat written law. They say they want to speak the truth, but they don't really.
No,
they want to project their own guilt onto the rest of us.
Right. Well, the door swings back, as I said. It seems to be generational. Did we need to have so many Jews suffer in persecution in World War II to realize what a good society is versus a bad society? There was a shocking awakening. The Stockholm Syndrome, many people just buried their heads in the sand and didn't want to face the truth about the reality of the world around them, until it hit them personally. And that's what's happening here. The Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z folks, most of them have not been informed about or trained on just what a Declaration of Independence is, or the Bill of Rights to the Constitution. They wouldn't know what you're talking about. And as a consequence, they don't appreciate that which has been given to them. In fact, they take it to the next level in many cases and expect more for nothing. They're feeding into this syndrome. I called it earlier, a mass formation psychosis. Dr. Malone used the term. It's referred to the systematic regeneration of thinking, things that are taken away from you in your day-to-day life and things that are impregnating you in your day-to-day life. It are things that are controlled by the Soroses and the Schwabs of the world. And keep Bill Gates in the center of that too. He's just as much the culprit. He was an interesting young entrepreneur in the early years, but boy, he has gone sideways in his later years. I'm very
he's turned into a Bond villain.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Meanwhile, while you and I are talking, Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas is testifying before Congress, and he's getting his keister handed to him.
Yeah.
I think he ought to put it in a wood chipper. It'd be less painful.
Yeah, well, I saw that Mayorkas was going to testify before judiciary today. Apparently, Jordan told him, you better come prepared because we're going to grill you. And then they showed but right before we went on the air, it was actually kind of an amusing picture. It just showed Mayorkas sitting at the table, hands clasped, waiting. Basically, it's like a kid waiting outside the principal's office. Nobody was up on the diocese yet. Nobody was there. Jordan, none of the committee was there. And he's just sitting there waiting, thinking, I'm about to get my ass handed to me.
Is it me, or is it true that Mayorkas is an example of those eyes that sort of stare at you in some sort of trance of robotic look? It's a robotic clone looking at me. He looks like an artificially intelligent generated person that's talking to me in the I don't know. They just all seem to be that way. Is it me?
It looks like one of the animatronic characters from the Hall of Presidents of Disney.
That's
he just
kind of
walks. Yeah. I get that. He does look that way. But
I don't
you
know.
know, I mean, I wonder, Gene, on a serious note, do you think a guy like Mayorkas has to know? I mean, he has to know that he is destroying our sovereignty. He has to know it. He has to know that he's not defending the border, and yet he will sit there and, as you may mention, robotically deny the truth. And the truth is that we can all see the truth. And he's just, we are apprehending more people. We are
Yeah.
sending more. And of course, it's all crap.
And here's your green card and vote Democratic in November.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the I've often said that Democrats need to be needed, and the only way you're needed is by having a whole bunch of needy people. So what do? They open the southern border wide open while they're bad mouthing America as a systemically racist nation. People of color from all over Latin, South America, Central America are flooding our border. Not to
Yeah.
mention Chinese nationals and people we don't even know. Probably Hamas agents have come in here. It's
Yeah.
I think it's not a matter of if we're going to get attacked from within. It's from some of these folks that have crossed the border. It's a matter of when we're going to get attacked from within.
That's the issue. And my solution is constitutional amendment that allows for an immediate adjudication of wrongdoing. Oh, I'll just vote him out next election. No, that's 2, 3, 4 years away. That's too long. I want a supreme magistrate system to exist independent of the other three arms of government, to immediately respond like a Delta Force, a task force, to go after Hunter Biden, to go after at the legitimacy of Adam Schiff's commentary, to go after the documents in a fair way, whether it's Biden's home or Hillary's home. Find out where
Yeah.
the where's the rags of the beach blit that scrubbed her computer, by the way, and where are those 30,000 emails? That's what the supreme magistrate would do without prejudice or preference to either party, because I would recommend, unlike a special prosecutor, that the supreme magistrate be elected by the citizens, very much like an independent arm. Yes, it's part of government, but it's separate and apart. The only remedy for a supreme magistrate is to take something on appeal to the Supreme Court. And that would be it. It's a longer story. It's on genevalentino.com under my websites. I have Gene's second Bill of Rights, and one of them is a discussion about the supreme magistrates.
Well, I think it's a wonderful idea. I just wonder, Democrats right now are full tilt boogie on pushing this complete remaking of the American. Not only this is what scares me. It's not just that they're remaking America, but they're doing it from within. They're remaking agencies. I mean, pick an agency. EPA, corrupt as far as I'm concerned. CDC, obviously they were corrupt. NIH, corrupt. FBI, hello. DOJ. It's like they've infiltrated all of these intergovernmental agencies like a cancer, and it's metastasized into all of these agencies. And then, of course, as if that weren't bad enough, Gene, they've also got their state media that will ignore what they're doing wrong and continue. I mean, what are they going to do when Trump is gone? Well, they're going to have to come up with a new Trump, I guess.
Well, that's what I hoped. This is me personally now. I was hoping Ron DeSantis would have been in boot camp under Trump as vice president and then get handed 1 or 2 terms after. And hopefully he'd carry the mantra or the energy that Trump still has. You mentioned something very interesting. I had the privilege of meeting an Israeli citizen yesterday here in the United States on a speaking tour. His name is Elliot Chodoff, Chodoff. He's a political and military analyst specializing in Mideast conflict and the global war on terrorism. He advises many military entities here in the United States and in Israel. His home is in Israel, not far from the Gaza Strip. And he was here chatting with me yesterday, and he says, the difference between us and America is that we have no friends on our border. Our border is a military border. No one crosses that border. You in America have been so passive and welcoming and euphoric in your feelings about letting these poor souls over the line to enjoy the riches that I embarrassingly have that you don't have. And he says that thinking, this is an Israeli telling me this. He says you're going to your nation's going to come to an end if you don't put those borders back up and protect them. Sure, they're welcome in, and in fact, many are welcome in Israel as well, but they have a very strict immigration policy, as we should have. And I bring that to your attention because I think something's going on with our lack of concern to be strong and bold and dogmatic about in our position about protecting the Constitution we're living by. These people coming up with these initiatives in Congress are doing nothing but violating the spirit of the Constitution from the get-go. And that's where I have a problem. I could go on about that. But
Well, it's a real problem, and it's a problem that that seemingly is being not only ignored, but it's being shunned and mocked by the left. That they're like, I mean, we were talking about the poll that showed that the young Americans are less patriotic, less proud of their country. Well, when you go to a public school and you're told the founding fathers were a bunch of racist slave owners, you don't put into context that most of them weren't, firstly.
yeah.
Secondly, many of them were abolitionists who were completely against slavery. But I mean, I'm not going to rewrite the history of the United States. We know it. We
Yeah,
know
but
we had original sin.
To your point
But-
right
but they-
there.
yeah.
Yeah, to your point right there, this Israeli guest I had was telling me you don't have a choice in Israel. You finish 12 years of school, you go right into the Israeli military for 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, the IDF, sure.
The IDF, and you are learning about patriotism and respect for the nation of Israel.
And they're
And,
very proud of their nation over there.
Yes, yes. And is there no small coincidence our volunteer army our volunteer military has even changed the rules on acceptability and standards, and it's weakened our strength as a nation.
Well, it's not lost on me, Gene Valentino, that everything that Biden has done, everything, and I mean everything, whether it's the border, whether it's the green energy push that we're seeing all up and down the East Coast right now with these wind farms that are going to be horrendous. All of it is to the benefit of China. All of it.
Yes.
I mean, these people complain, they rail against coal mining, how filthy. And yet China owns almost all the cobalt mines, the lithium mines. Even if they're not in China, they may be in Africa, but guess what? China owns them. And so this kind of circles back to the whole Hunter and the corrupt Biden family. I think he's sold out his country, and I think that he's doing it at the behest of his own greed, but also at the behest of the universal masterminds that we mentioned, this George Soros, the Klaus Schwabs of the world.
Yes, this web of deception is falling apart, Stephen. This labyrinth of hierarchy of networks and entities have all been set up to deceive America, talking about the Biden family crime scheme. And as it's revealed every day now in hearings and so forth, more and more is going to come forward showing just how pervasive it is. And what is it going to do? It's going to show that the charges against Donald Trump are so benign and insignificant that they've been brought forward on the basis, from my observation, they've been brought forward on the basis of incomplete information. And I think that there's going to be a reckoning. There's going to be something that steps up, whether it's out of Congress, and you and I talked about it in the past, or a convention of states that steps up and creates the 27th, 28th Amendment to the Constitution that not come from Congress if they can't agree, but comes from the citizens through the Convention of States. Because I do believe we need a serious enema on certain issues, some of which you brought up this morning. Joe Biden is the web of deceit is melting, and his direct association to the wrongdoings of his son are in plain view and are going to be more and more evident in the next few days. That's why that attorney was pushing the clerk of the court
to deny the amicus. Yeah.
to deny the amicus brief, because the evidence was so even more blatant in favor of against Biden.
Yeah, and it looks like Devin Archer is probably going to be giving a deposition behind closed doors on Monday. And the word has it that, and Devin Archer has no loyalty to the Bidens because they showed him none. He's on his way to prison for doing the exact same thing, and even really to a lesser degree than Hunter was doing all over the planet with Biden. I maintain, Gene, that it's not that the Democrats are trying to save Joe Biden's ass because they think Joe Biden is a good guy and he's good old lunch bucket, blue collar Joe. He's a nice guy. Sometimes sometimes he speaks wrong, but God love him, to borrow a line from Joe Biden. I think the reason they're trying to save his ass is because they realize that if he goes down, they go down. All of a sudden, all of this dirty business is going to be starting to come back. It'll come back on Obama. It'll come back on Pelosi. It'll come back on some of the Republicans too, frankly, mostly the never Trumper types. And I think that they're saving Biden to save themselves. Do you think that sounds about right?
Boy, you hit the nail on the head. I think that I made a prediction that the Democrat Party as we know it today will either will be out of business, or it'll morph into something else so totally unrelated. And it seemed clear, not because of Republicans' abilities to step up and fight back, which they're poor at, but things like Robert F. Kennedy, a Democrat himself, stepping up and sticking it in the face of his fellow Democrats. Keep an eye on Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
She could emerge as a vice presidential candidate. Some of these, how many Republicans have gone Democrat? How many Democrats do you know have gone Republican?
That's a good point.
It's slow, it's progressing. It's not as fast as I'd like, but it's happening. And the beauty of this nation is it's the oldest governing entity in the world, not because we get it right all the time, but because we have a system in place where we can constantly fix our failures. And that's the beauty of our nation, our governance, which distinguishes us from other governances in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, that's the true meaning of American exceptionalism. It's not braggadocious. American exceptionalism, we were the exception back in the day. Back in the day when our nation was founded, we were, as your hat says, we the people. We were self-governing, and therefore we were the exception. Hence American exceptionalism. But even that has been turned around by the likes of Obama. Oh, I'm sure Greek is exceptional too. If you're a Greek citizen, well, of course it is. Nobody said anything other than that. But this is what they do. They conflate. They lie by omission and commission. And they've done a number on our young people today. That's the sad truth. They've really done a number on our young people today. I suspect when these young people are forced to pay back their student loans that Biden promised the rest of us would pay back, and when they're forced to sign a mortgage, their heads may turn around a little bit. But as it stands right now, they're doing everything in their power to kneecap any thought of patriotism or pride of nation.
Yeah. There's so many other issues I know you and I could chat about. The vaccination revelation, about the effectiveness of the vaccination itself, with LeBron James's son collapsing now, is another example of a few that are before us that have taken the vax and are finding. I'm not a doctor now, and I'm not making a direct association because I cannot prove it. But when you see things that develop a pattern, you begin to ask, at least, right? So in this case, heads up, what did Fauci do to push this vaccination that was not totally proven through for acceptance and delivery to the market worldwide so quickly?
Yeah, it's a very good point. And that, of course, goes to another level of corruption.
Right.
I used to be one of those guys that used to always say, oh, don't blame Big Pharma. But by God, Big Pharma made billions and billions of dollars, and they still make billions even if it weren't for the COVID vaccine. Every time you have a baby and they give them all of the vaccines, they're making billions. I tell you, Gene, I do hope that pendulum swings back quick, because we are losing this nation. But I am seeing some, some fresh sprouts of green grass growing here and there. And of course,
Yes.
your podcast is a large helps. That your podcast, speaking of green grass, the Grassroots Truth Cast. Where can we hear that? Because we've only got a couple of minutes left. So let's plug you away.
www.grassrootstruthcast.com. That's grassroots. It doesn't matter if you capitalize it or not. Roots, plural, truthcast.com, or just go to genevalentino.com and you'll see Grassroots Truthcast is one of the portals there. Thank you for mentioning it, Steve. We put Steve Hook's interviews up on that as well. So if you missed something here with Steve, you'll find a TNT Radio Live episode on ours as well.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for that. I always enjoy when my producer called up and said, "How about Gene Valentino?" I said, "Yes, for God's sakes, yes." The most fascinating man in the world, ladies and gentlemen, it's Gene Valentino. Gene, God bless you, sir. Thank you for joining me today. I hope we can do it again real soon. Have a wonderful week, my friend. You take care.
Always a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.